And Mr. Trump, we don't need an apprentice in the White House. We don't need an apprentice in the White House. We have one right now.
Excuse me.
No, let me talk about
in
this.
Wisconsin, you're losing $2.2 billion right now.
You're using
I would
talking...
do so much better than that. When the folks of Iowa found out the true facts of the job that you've done in Wisconsin, all of a sudden you tubed. He was #1. Now he's number 6 or 7 in the polls.
Just because he says it doesn't make it true.
Couple of spirited exchanges there between Donald Trump and Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker last night. The pair sparred over poll numbers in Iowa and managing debt. Joining us now with his take on how it all went, Governor Scott Walker. Governor, good morning. Very good to have you with us today.
Good morning. Great to be with you. Great to be back here at the Reagan Library.
Yeah, well, you've been there almost all night. Just a couple hours of sleep probably that you managed to squeeze in. Exactly. All right. We got a little bit of a delay, so I just want to tell folks at home that that's why we're kind of stepping on each other just a tad. But, I just want to get your assessment of how, you go in there with expectations, obviously, and you go in there prepared. When you came off the stage last night, how did you feel?
Well, we set the tone early on, as you mentioned in the clips. We went out there and said, there's a real difference out there. If you want an apprentice, if you want someone who's never been tested, we've seen how that worked out. We've got an apprentice right now in the White House, and I don't think that's worked out very well. Someone who said all sorts of great things in 2008 to many Americans, but then actually couldn't follow through on them. I mean, he told us, you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. That obviously ended up not being the case. And I think Americans want someone who's going to take out Washington for sure, but they want someone who's been proven. If you're going to hire someone, you want someone who's been tested under similar circumstances. That's not any of the outsiders. That's really in this race. There's nobody who's been tested better than we have been, and I think we made that case early on in that flare-up with Mr. Trump.
Yeah. Well, what Mr. Trump pointed out was that, since the first debate, and now you've had 2 debates under your belt, it hasn't helped your numbers. And he's right that you're in, according to the Real Clear Politics average, 6th or 7th place now in Iowa, where you were #1. Iowa was supposed to be your state. When you looked at this, you spent a lot of time there, and now you're 2 debates in, and everybody who's, talking about the front runners last night and the people who did the best are not listing your name among those big winners last night. So what are you going to do to turn this around?
Well, I think in the case of Iowa, actually, we just started our campaign 2 months ago. Others have been to those in the early states many more times than we have, but we've hunkered down now. We just announced this week 99 county chairs in Iowa. I think we're the first campaign to do that. We're going to have people all the way down to the 1,600 precinct levels. We're going to go out and organize voter by voter in Iowa, make the case there, I think win come February 1st in the caucuses, and then come back and do well in many of the other early states. But you don't just do it on the debate stage. You do it grassroots level. You do it voter by voter level, particularly in a state like Iowa, and I'm going to be back there this weekend.
All right. It was a tough environment out there last night. A lot of people were just sort of jumping in, and they were fighting for their time up there. And we just got the list of ranking of how much time people ended up getting, and you are at the bottom. In 3 hours, you were able to fight your way in there to speak 8 minutes and 24 seconds. Was that your fault, or was that CNN's fault?
Well, they asked 3 questions in 3 hours, according to that data. We actually had to interrupt. I think I was second only to Carly in terms of interruptions, and even at that, the other time we got 3 questions. So the bottom line is we tried to use quality over quantity and to make the best of that time. And like I said early on, we set the stage and made the case that if you want someone who's been tested, I mean, think about it. There are a lot of good people up there with many good ideas, but how do we know what they'll actually do in office? I've been tested unlike anybody else out there. When we had 100,000 protesters, we didn't back down. We took on the big government union labor bosses. We've got a plan to do that nationally as well. We're not going to back down that. We're not going to back down from dealing with the deficit. We're not going to back down even from our own party's leadership in Washington, if that's what it takes to get this country back on track again. And I think the more we make that case, the better off we're going to be.
You've been written about a lot for having a very good story, obviously, in Wisconsin. Donald Trump took issue with some of those numbers last night, and you rebutted his take on that. But, it begs a question in terms of the campaign. Are you thinking about making any changes in your campaign to try to turn this thing around?
Oh, for us, the biggest thing, again, is that grassroots. You know, Ronald Reagan was behind in the polls in 1980. He was in a difficult spot in September of 1979, I should say, a year out. He went forward and obviously won that election and brought about one of the best presidencies we've had, I think, in modern American history. It's getting back to, in his case, he got back to his track record as a successful governor, but more importantly, he laid out a positive vision for how to move this country forward. We've got a positive vision for how to move this country forward. I think part of the reason why the questions went the way they went is many of the other candidates spend their time attacking other Republicans, which is why they pose those questions. We actually spend our time going after Barack Obama and, more importantly, Hillary Clinton. And if you watch over the last couple of weeks, who have they been going after? They've been going after me. Barack Obama on Labor Day specifically went after me. Hillary Clinton multiple times the last couple of weeks going after us. Why? Because we don't just have big ideas, we've actually done them, and that's what worries them the most.
So everybody on that stage was trying to sort of take a bite out of the numbers that Donald Trump has right now. He's in first place, clearly. And one of the interesting tactics that you took was to try to label him as an insider, as somebody who has worked the system. How do you think that went over?
Well, if you listen to it, he himself said it. It opened up. This is not something we came in. I actually listened to what he said, and he pointed out, he said, hey, you know, I play the system. That's why I give money to Democrats. I give money to Republicans. I get things done. I said, that's exactly what's wrong with Washington. We've got too many people who play the system. Nobody's standing up for average Americans. Nobody's standing up for the hardworking taxpayers. We need to level the playing field. We need to get rid of all these special deals. We need to get rid of all these special treatments. I said, it's not just Wall Street that's the issue. It's K Street, where all the lobbyists in Washington, D.C. hang out. And if they're doing special deals for people like Donald Trump, then that's not right for America. We need to have a level playing field. And I think the more that people look and listen to what he says versus what he's actually talking about, I think that'll ultimately, people will open their eyes and start looking at other candidates. And I hope they'll look at someone who's been tested in taking on those very special interests.
Governor Walker, thank you very much. Good to speak with you today.
Thank you, Martha.